So in just 1 minute, we're going to be getting back to things here and welcoming Vibke from Falcon to the social day stage. She'll be talking about your audience is talking about you. Are you listening? A great session on social listening. And I think Vibke's ready now to speak to you. I'll be back in about 25 minutes or so to ask your burning questions directly to her. So don't forget to use the hashtag SocialDay20 and share any insights you learned from her today. Okay, so let's welcome Vibke to the Social Day virtual stage. Yay!
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear and see me. Welcome to today's session. I hope you're all excited and you already had a good morning. The session today is going to be about social listening. So it is super lovely to be here. I feel like this industry this year really works, how like the whole thing is going virtual. So let's get started. My session is going to be roughly about 30 minutes long. But it would be boring if it would be only me talking for 30 minutes. So we also have the Q&A session at the end. Feel free to send all questions my way in the chat. And I would love to hear your thoughts, your challenges, whatever is happening. I can already see that we are not at the first slide. So I'll just jump back. Here we go. Let's start at the first slide. So as I said, feel free to send all your questions my way in the chat. My lovely team is also online, so they'll answer some questions as we go, and then we take the big ones in the end. So social listening. Before we dive into it, my name is Vibke. I am working for Falcon, a social media management platform, as you just saw before, and part of the platform is also a social listening tool, and that's why I'm here. I am located in the beautiful city of Copenhagen, so I'm sitting right next to Tivoli for those who've already been here maybe. So if I get distracted during the sessions, it's probably because there's some people in a roller coaster next to me. But I'll try my best to keep focused. I am a strategist at Falcon, helping our customers with all their challenges on social. So I'm starting from KPIs, reading data, setting their goals, or just going into community management, or even writing a full social media strategy. So basically, I'm advising them on every challenge they have on social media. So if you have any challenges, just like drop them in the chat and we'll try to help you. So, if we talk about social listening, or if we talk about our social media in a general view, we often only look at our owned and paid content. So when I work with my customers, they really have a strong focus on their owned and paid content, but they never really dive into the earned side of things. So they all know their engagement rates, they all know their post clicks, they all know their average reach. But no one really knows how many mentions they maybe generate or how much noise is happening outside of their own challenges. And I think that is really, really crazy because, I mean, earned media is basically free. And where do we ever get a better return of investment, right? So our boss always wants to hear about return of investment. Let's give it to him. So a large part of earned media is word of mouth marketing. And this has really developed during the past years. And it's not just about what people tell their friends and families anymore. It is really about how much influence they have on social media. So if we get a positive or a negative mention online, we need to know where these are happening, since it's difficult to influence the opinions and we really want to learn about them. So we need to get out there, we need to set up some social listening to really understand what the vibe around our brand and our company is in general. So maybe we can even turn some negative comments into positive comments. But that's what I will focus on now. So if we go into just a quick introduction of social media listening, I think there is 4 main use cases. Maybe you can even look at 5 use cases if you say content inspiration is its own use case. But really there's 4 main use cases I always advise my customers to look into. So if we look at the first use case, we have campaign monitoring. When I invest time and money into a campaign, I for sure also want to know what people say about it, right? So let's imagine you launch your campaign and you know exactly what is happening on your channels, on all the amazing content you produce. But what is happening outside? Are people like sharing? Are people talking about it? Is there news about it? So that's really what social listening and the campaign monitoring is about. So I better set up a project where I can catch all the campaign keywords. My favorite use case, not that I like crisis, but my favorite use case is crisis management of social listening. So a crisis management project is really an absolute must for every company. I think we can all get hit by a crisis, so we should for sure have a basic project set up where we can see what is happening out there. So a crisis can start easily outside of our own channel, and we got to catch it early to really be there before it takes off. I've seen so many brands that jumped on the train way too late, and that is simply because they didn't take care of what was happening outside of their own channels. And then we have another use case, which is the competitor analysis and some content inspiration. So I think competitor analysis is a really nice feature within social listening. So it allows us to see what other brands are doing, but it also gives us room for research to see what they maybe aren't doing. So where is there maybe a white space for us to create better content and to really stand out? And that's also the direction content inspiration goes into, right? Like what content is already out there, what can I learn from, and what can I do different? And then the last use case I think everyone should focus on a little is the brand sentiment. So we shouldn't forget that on our pages, we always have followers and people that like us. But what is happening outside? So do we find more people that maybe have a negative opinion about our brand, or do we find brand lovers that have never really interacted with us? So if we catch a lot of negative sentiment, we better do something about it. But if the sentiment is generally positive, I'm sure we can find some really good brand ambassadors that can provide us the perfect user-generated content, for example. So that is the 4 use cases I would like to dive into a little with you, to also give you some examples how other brands are doing it, and just to really get you started on social listening, and to show you how you can maybe use social listening in a more effective way. Let's look at a campaign WWF launched many years ago, and it's still running. So if you, in campaign management, evaluate your own content, you're not really getting the full reach. So you can first get the full picture of a campaign, in my opinion. Like, of course, you're getting all the reach on your own channels, but you're not really getting the real reach. So you can first get a full picture of a campaign when you also considered your own data. Are people talking about the campaign? Was it a success? Or maybe is there not a single mention? I mean, it would be very sad if there wasn't, but it can be a case that really your campaign goes unnoticed. So if we look at this example from WWF, who just held a great keynote before me, and who happened to be one of our lovely customers, and they really rock social listening. Like they are really good on social media, but they also look into their own data. And they've been running this awareness campaign, Fight for Your World, for years. And they are also using the hashtag Fight for Your World whenever a big campaign is out there. And the organization is challenge this hashtag the public to be more respectful towards Mother Nature and to make people aware of the fact that this generation might be the last one that can do something for nature. So how can social listening help during their campaign? If you look at the graph, when you have the screen there, you can look at the graph and you can see the different lines and you can see the different colors. And that's then when we look into how are the different networks reacting to the campaign and maybe how are the mentionings going up and down, and then we can dive deeper into what mentions are really about. And I mean, we can all pretty clearly see the peak up there, right? So there is a peak on a very special day in the time frame I selected here. And now as someone who runs the campaign, you think, great, I have a peak. I can just invest more money in this, and this is it. It's a successful campaign. But I love data. I think we should dive more into data, and we should really learn about like why do those peaks and maybe also drops happen. So in the graph here, we can see that it's Earth Hour. So that's a special day where they get a lot of attention, where their brand is mentioned a lot. So what I would do as a content planner now here, I would go through the whole year and I would go and look into when is my brand having peaks? When do I get special mentions? When am I really like the talk of town? And for all those great peaks, I would then create some special content. I would create content that is very shareable, that is awareness content, and that can go viral. Because I mean, I want to use those days and really place my content out there and then make sure that people listen to it and share it, so I can make myself a name and I can use the campaign for my own sake. And then what I would ideally also do is relate it maybe to a blog article, so I lead them to my website, or I even lead them to a new website sign up. So if you are not an NGO or you're not running campaigns like this, of course you can also lead them to your website or to your shop, depending on what special days or products you are having. So this is really what campaign monitoring is about. So if you evaluate your campaign, you need to look at the full picture. You can create a word cloud with your team just to say, okay, what is this campaign about? What words can maybe trigger something in relation to our brand where we can really see our relevance? And then you can set up an alert so you get an email for peaks. So it's not that you need to sit there every day and you need to look at your mentions, but you can really set up an alert and then you're getting alerted when peaks are happening. And this is where you then learn more about when your audience or your potential audience is interested in your brand. And then, of course, user-generated content, super strong, use it for your brand and build a community. So that is that is campaign monitoring. The next one is crisis management. As I said before, it's one of my favorite use cases. So when it comes to social listening, crisis management is extremely important. I think social listening can really prevent us from the big disaster. In my opinion, it's an absolute must to have a social listen project around a potential crisis. So I usually do workshops and sit down with my customers, and then we create word clouds about potential areas of risks. And spend a few seconds just now and think about what crisis could hit your company, and if you have a system set up that maybe alerts you about this crisis, or would you be really hit by a crisis not knowing what's happening out there? So if you have a system that alerts you early enough when something is happening, you also have the time to react to it, right? So here, you should really be a pessimist rather than an optimist. You should really set up a big word cloud, really think in all directions. I mean, there's a lot of brands that probably, if we look at Volkswagen at the beginning of the year, they probably wouldn't have thought that they get so many crises at once. I mean, they had so much happening around their brand, and I'm sure that they didn't expect this to happen. So we really need to be pessimists and think, what can happen to us as a brand? What is maybe our weak points? What is areas that could fire back at us? And if like the PR team probably knows a lot about this. So just really as a social team, sit together with them and see what you can maybe expect and what is just a safe place to write some words down to trigger a crisis. So the word cloud I just wrote here, I just dropped in some words my customers like to use. So it could be for any food company. If you go into chocolate, or if you go into like greenwashing, a lot of are like, often brands are also attacked for human rights, for equal rights, corruption. That's what like every brand can be hit by. So this is really words you should consider setting up a project. And then after you've done all of this, of course, you also need to have a plan to action, right? So that brings me also to the point that not every negative mention is causing a crisis. So you don't need to always expect the worst. You can also say, well, there might be also just some negative comments, but how do I react to those? So it's not just about if this, like the sentiment of your brand can move to a negative direction. So it doesn't need to be a crisis as such, but it can also be just some very negative comments around your brand. And that's also where you want to get on top of these in a good time. So yeah, as I said, just think about what crisis could occur for your brand, set up a word cloud. What is a crisis? What is just critique? Just talk about rules of engagement with your team, and then train your team to react to those so that they really know what the data of a social monitoring project means. And there is many, many companies out there that do the social listening. So that's just where you can get started, basically. But also, as I said, that it is not always a crisis, but it can also be just some negative comments around your brand. So that's where you want to learn how to really put those things into place. So where is the origin of your conflict? If we look at the right corner here, we can see that it is an external problem that is caused by an intent. So it is often a troll. We don't really want to care about trolls. We don't want to feed them. So that is something you can just drop very, very quickly. But if we have something that comes from an internal perspective, means it's bad communication from us or from one of our employees, we really want to do something about it, because it is a problem that we created. So it's something we need to react to and something that can backfire. And this is something you can really catch by getting a listening project set up, and then you can just really catch all the negative comments coming in, and then you can react to it in a very timely manner. So really be aware of where is the origin of the conflict. So if we look at like crisis management, if we look at negative comments, once you know there isn't maybe a crisis, but a wave of negativity, you have enough time to get to it. Look where the problem comes from. Often negative comments are just based on social, like on negative feelings. It's a matter of fairness. It happens to a lot of customers that they don't feel treated fairly, and that they are the only ones that can you are the only ones that can turn this around. So reply honest and personal and give them a feeling that you care. So once you have all the data coming in, really look into it and say well, where are those, where's the origin of those negative comments? And then what you can see on the right side here is now some Facebook translation of comments, but what you can see on the right side here is something Fairtrade is getting a lot. So Fairtrade often gets criticized that they are too expensive and that people can't afford them. So they don't feel treated fairly because they want to buy the product, but they just can't pay for it. But Fairtrade can really change their concept here, since the whole concept is fair wages, which means that they have more expensive products, right? So what they can do is they can just listen to the critique and then also understand that it's not really a critique towards them as a brand, but rather than the people's status of life. So just they can just start a conversation. They can just listen to it and just ask some open questions. And this is how you get really out of all the mentions you are having. You can really also build a community and some positivity around your brand. So really get to the root of it. Another use case, so if we wrap up crisis management and we talked about negative comments, another use case is brand sentiment as a general. So brand sentiment can give you a pretty good overview of how people feel about your brand. I mean, I said it before, you often have on your own channels, let's be on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, you often have people that support you, right? We have people that like your brand, and that's why they follow you. So what really happens outside of your own little happy bubble, and that is where you can find either brand haters or even stronger brand lovers that are just not the people that just send you private messages. So what is the general vibe of the internet? That is what brand sentiment is all about. If there's a large amount of negative feedback around your brand, it probably makes sense to spend some time on the data. Look into the data and tackle it with a sense of humor. Look at some campaigns. Or I love a Berlin company, which is like a public transport company that has a great sense of humor, and they know they're always running late. So they ran a campaign around this to really pick up all the negative mentions they have on social and turn it in a humorous, positive campaign. So this is just one example how you can really use the negative brand sentiment to turn it into something positive. But of course, you can also find some true brand lovers out there who love your brand. You can turn them into brand advocates. Maybe you don't need to hire a fancy influencer agency. You can just go out there and write to them and maybe just start some great conversations with them, so they even stand up for your brand more often, because that's what they often do. And if there is negative comments happening, they gonna be the one that gonna jump into it, and they just gonna fight for you. So often also branding sentiment can be used for rebranding. So if you're having a new name, if you have a whole new image, listen out for what is happening, what people feel about it, and then you can really react to it. Just remember, it's probably not happening on your own channels. So that is super important to keep in mind. The next use case is some content inspiration, and that is also very interesting, because when I talk to creative people and those that are creating the content, they're often like, oh, I just don't know anymore what to do. How can I be special? How can I be different? So really get inspired by your competitors, get inspired by brands that are great on social, but also look for it to find a white space. Here now I imagine to be a skiing brand that has no clue what to post in summertime. So I go out to explore what is happening in summertime around skiing, and that is very active people outdoor hiking. So maybe that's the content I should jump into. Maybe it's also the content I don't want to jump into because everyone is already doing it. So this is really what content inspiration on social listening is about. So I can go with the flow, or I can just be very, very different. So if you roughly know what you're looking for, you can see content that worked for other brands, but you can also see maybe what campaigns have been running out there. And even if you are in the sports industry, let's say in the sports industry, and you are looking at Nike and Patagonia and Adidas and all those big brands, you can see that they are all extreme athletic and they are super fit. They never break a sweat. That's a right space for you right there. It's it shows you, well, people aren't really the fittest when they start doing sports, right? So let's show some realistic and authentic content. So this is what you can use content inspiration of social listening for. And then we have a last use case, which is a competitor analysis. So of course, we also touched on it a little before, but competitors are also out there. So set up a project with your competitor names, hashtags, whatever you know about them, and valuable insights you maybe want to get. And then I would suggest just picking a handful of direct competitors, and maybe they are ideally of ideal size. So now I talked about Nike and Adidas, but we don't all have the resources like they do, right? So just make it that it is also comparable, and you're not comparing yourself with the biggest players out there. Once you set up the project, you can find out what people are saying about you, what they say about your brand, what is the sentiment like. Do they love a brand, like one of your competitors, more than they love you? So that is really what you can look into, and then also see, are you dominating on one of the platforms? Are maybe one of your competitors dominating Instagram? What can make you stronger on Instagram? This is really, I mean, it's a whole project you can run just on competitors out there. So don't use a competitor research to copy their approach, but to learn from it and also to learn to be different. And I think that's what I have for you now. I hope there's a lot of questions that came in, and I'm ready to take them if you have anything.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes,
how are you doing?
Oh, good, thank you.
now.
How are you?
How are you doing? You're right. Thank you for such a good session. It was really interesting, and there's lots of people saying what a great session it is and sharing their pictures all over social media of all the stuff that they've learned. But we also have a few questions for you, if you're ready to answer them. The first one is from Peter Sumpton. And Peter says, are you better focusing on a single source of truth with data, or is it better to use multiple sources? Each tool will have a different way of calculating elements, such as positive and negative comments.
Yeah,
So,
I would say it is a good start to start with having one source. Also because otherwise data might not be really comparable. And I think that really is, if you want to benchmark yourself, one source is a good starting point before you start comparing really like apples and oranges. So start with one source and then see if you have capacity to even dive into more sources.
Okay. Thank you. I hope that answers your question well, Peter. We have a question from Alexander Gale as well, and they say, do you use one or two words or phrases to avoid a huge data return and be more specific?
Yeah, usually I exclude a lot of words as well. So when I set up a project, I make sure that they are really relevant for me or like for the brand. But then I also adapt projects as I go. So when I set up a project, I exclude words, but there's always going to be something that is creating some noise. So I think you should go in and on a regular basis and really correct your project and see what is actually happening, what is pulled in, and then exclude some additional words as you go.
Okay, thank you. And Melanie also has a question. Melanie says, hey Vibeke, thanks for the valuable session. Which regions and languages is Falcon able to listen at, especially in relation to crisis management?
Oh, you got me there. So for sure, like I think like we cover nearly all regions. I don't want to lie here, and check out in the booth when we have our sales team there. But I think what might be a bit tricky is languages like Mandarin, maybe. That's something I could imagine to become tricky, but otherwise we should be very confident in covering all regions and like all sources and languages besides that.
Okay, thank you. And Caroline is asking, great session, thank you. Where is the best place for me to look at competitors and market share?
Can you just repeat the question one more time?
So Caroline says, great session, thank you. And where is the best place for me to look at competitors and market share?
Mm-hmm. That really depends on where you're at, right? So are you very strong on social media, or are you rather strong on like other channels? So if we talk social media now, is Instagram your place where your audience is at, or is it maybe Twitter you should be looking at? So really consider what you are strong at and what your place is and where you want to dominate, and then from there take it to the competitors.
Okay, thank you. And we have a question from Sabrina. What would be your top selling points to encourage clients to invest in social listening?
Oh, I think I would just give them a great example of a crisis where a company reacted too late. I think that is a great selling point. I don't want to call out companies here, but there is a lot that just jumped on way too late and didn't react to a crisis at all. I think that's a good one. Maybe also looking into where competitors are much stronger. So that is then where you need to learn more about competitors. I think that's the two selling points I would present my customer for sure.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for this fantastic session. There's loads of people saying how good it is, and there was loads of questions as well. And you'll be around, won't you, to answer people's questions directly in the app for a while. And please do go into the Falcon booths, because they'll be able to answer all of your burning questions about social listening and also, the actual tool itself, won't they?
Yes, absolutely. So that's the place to go for the tool, and come to me for all social questions. I'm going to stay online and just send them my way, and I'm happy to have a chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And where can people find you if they want to connect with you after the event?
You can find me on LinkedIn for sure. I think that's the best place to go. And then otherwise, I'll be in the app. So just send me a message there, and then we can connect.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for a great session. And please, everybody from home, do give her a big round of applause, just as though we were on the Social Day stage for real. Thank you very much. It's been great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.